Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel to get notifications. Let's talk about the couple of the brilliant fights that happened tonight. First, we'll start off with Usyk Chisora. Then we'll talk about Lee Selby against George Kambosos. Brought preview videos for both of these fights. Gave quite an in-depth technical breakdown for the Kambosos fight. Also did some technical stuff on the Usyk Chisora fight. And starting with the Usyk Chisora fight. Early in the fight, as I said in the preview video, one key thing that I thought Chisora had to do was look for wide left hooks to stop Usyk escaping to his own right. And he was doing that. He was doing that very, very effectively. And Usyk looked clunky, slow. He looked very fleshy. If you look at them in their corners before they came out to meet each other, and you're looking at his physique, and then you look at his physique when he was in the cruiserweight division, he hasn't, I'm not saying he should put on the muscle, put on muscle instead of fat, because muscle weighs more than fat and it would affect his movement. But I'm not sure exactly whether he got that right, the balance right between athleticism and just putting on weight. To me, he looked a little bit clunky early in that first round, and he wasn't escaping as quickly as he could have. The second round I also gave to Chisora. After that, I thought Usyk started to take control, and what Usyk started to do, which was very, very effective, I've said in the past, I said in the preview video, Usyk starts very slowly, just like Lomachenko. We've spoken about this after the Lope Lomez fight too, where both of these guys start slowly because they're looking at their opponent and trying to read patterns. And it took him a while to read those patterns, and he looked uncomfortable. And Macklin gave the first round to Usyk. I definitely don't see how he gave him the first round. I thought Chisora definitely won the first round. I think Usyk looked really poor. Having said that, what he's very good at doing is not absorbing punishment. And like I said in the preview again, he rolls away. He almost rolls with punches using his feet. He moves in the direction you're throwing punches. And it very quickly started to gas Chisora. We've heard so much about Chisora was in the best shape of his life and he looked good. But the fact of the matter is, when you're loading up on these big shots, there was an awful lot that it takes out of you when you don't hit the target. It's more tiring to miss than it is to be landing, because obviously the full rotation continues often and you're swinging past the line, and then you've got to pull yourself back up to recover your position if there's not obviously the opportunity there to then throw a follow-up shot. So for these big heavy guys who are trying to be explosive and throw these big wide shots, it takes a lot out of them when they're missing the target. And often he was missing the target. There were moments though where Usyk was a little bit staying on the ropes a little bit too long, something that you don't associate with Usyk. It wasn't a vintage performance, but this idea that Chisora won the fight, something that's being pushed by Bellew, by Dave Caldwell, I just don't see it. I'm sorry. Bellew was talking about Chisora being 4-0 up. Bellew is a fantastic fighter, but as a pundit, he is very, very biased. Very biased for matchroom fighters, for British fighters in general, but matchroom fighters in particular. And I just can't see how you give the first 4 rounds to him. People confuse the initial aesthetic of seeing a guy being ragdolled, essentially, falling away, running away quickly. That thing of trying to escape, that it seems like panic. You're seeing one guy hunting another guy and the other guy's moving away quickly. It seems like panic. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you look like, okay? I remember there's this footballer I used to love watching called Nwankwo Kanu, right? Arsenal fans will know who I'm talking about. Premier League fans will know who I'm talking about. Nigerian fans will know who I'm talking about. He was this lanky footballer who used to run, and when he was sprinting, he looked like he would fall over, and then he'd pull off the most amazing piece of skill and drag the ball away from an opponent, bend the ball in the top corner, whatever it is that he was doing. He was ungainly to look at. It wasn't neat and pretty, and yet he would do exceptional things. It's the end product that matters, not how it looks. It's substance rather than style that matters. So yes, he looked uncomfortable, but what really matters is, what was Chisora landing after the first 2 rounds? Not a lot, really. It was the odd shot that was coming off of the gloves. And you can't, if it's hitting a glove and it's hitting someone's head and it's moving their whole body, maybe you're going to say, okay, I'm going to consider that. But if it's just hitting the gloves and not really having an effect, you can't be scoring these as scoring shots just because you hear the thud smack off the glove, when the other guy's then going to catch you with a flush, clean shot. And Bellew was saying, when a guy's outlanding you 3-1, it doesn't matter who's landing the bigger shots. So he was acknowledging that Usyk was landing the crisper shots, but his argument was Chisora's outlanding him. He wasn't. He wasn't landing the clean shots after those first couple of rounds. That's not to say that Usyk's without criticism, apart from the shape that he came in, which I'm not convinced about. Chisora was there for the taking. Okay, Chisora, I predicted that I thought this fight might be a late stoppage for Usyk. And during the midway point, Chisora looked gassed. After 4 or 5 rounds, he looked done. And there were numerous moments, where Usyk was landing flush shots and he could have continued to throw a combination, and he didn't. And during that fight, in the latter part of the fight, if you go back and watch the fight again, there was a very clear and obvious tell coming from Chisora when he was throwing anything other than a jab. Whenever he was going to throw any sort of power punch, he would always bowl his head forward. He'd sink. So he'd sit, as you know, the phrase goes, sit on the shot. He'd sink. The minute he sinks, take half a step back, you come out of range. When he was upright, he wasn't doing anything. Sometimes, when he'd get his second wind, he'd throw a couple of jabs, and they were effective. There were some decent jabs. He's a heavy-handed guy. But nothing to write home about. In other words, there was a significant tell there, and he's not the fastest man on his feet. So why wasn't Usyk capitalizing on him being tired? He was eating shots. He staggered. I think it was the 7th, was it? Or the 5th? The 7th, I think it was, where he fell back onto the ropes towards the end of the round. And you could see that he was in serious trouble. And Usyk didn't put his foot on the gas. Really late in the fight, I think it was the 11th or 10th, 11th, there were 2 or 3 occasions where Chisora literally drops his hands, turns away, and starts walking away. And I'm sitting there thinking, what? And early in Chisora's career, I was at one of his fights, and I was sitting ringside. And he was fighting an opponent whose name I can't remember for the life of me. He was a tall, I think he was a tall white guy. He might have had a bald head, but I'm not sure. The point is, they were in the middle of the fight, and the opponent semi-turns his back, and Chisora pummels him, and the ref stops the fight. And there were a couple of people ringside who were saying, oh, that's a bit premature. And I thought to myself, that's not premature. If you're turning your back, you can't be giving these big heavyweights free shots when you're semi-turning your back. What's he supposed to do? Kill him. If you're not ready to defend yourself and you're not showing your ability to defend yourself, the fight's going to be stopped. This is why when a referee counts, he then feels your hands, sees the weight of your hands, checks your gloves, asks you if you're okay, sees if you're able to walk towards him and stuff like that, because you need to be ready to defend yourself. So Chisora clearly wasn't defending himself. And what did Usyk do? Now, what did he do? Nothing. He didn't step on the gas. Now, you could argue, well, maybe Chisora was setting a trap. He was playing possum, so Usyk didn't want to take a risk. Maybe, but if that's the case and he's turned his shoulder, if Usyk's a clock, Chisora's shoulder was at 7 p.m. He was practically turning away from him. Move yourself to 5 p.m. so you're pretty much behind him, so you're not worried about a counter, and smash him with a left hook. And this happened on 2 or 3 occasions where Chisora was there for the taking. He was breathing heavily. He didn't want it on a cup, and he's a warrior. I'm not questioning his heart. I'm just saying in that moment he needed a break, and Usyk gave it to him. If that's Deontay Wilder, he's taking Chisora's head clean off his shoulders. AJ's doing the same. Tyson Fury's doing the same. These big killer heavyweights, Dillian White, they're taking him out. So what was he doing in that put? Does he have the killer instinct? Because he's, whatever you say, one of the great things about staying amateur for a long time, when you're successful as an amateur, is the schooling that you're going to receive. And because it's a points-based system, you're going to get, it was a points-based system, you're going to get this level of movement down to a T, your technique, the technical aspect. It's almost like fencing. Brilliant for distance control, things like that. Brilliant. However, in the pro game, there's more of a killer instinct. And if you're staying in the amateurs for too long, maybe sometimes you're lacking that killer instinct. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe I'm just overanalyzing. Maybe he also needed a breather and he didn't want to take the risk. But then if he needed a breather against Chisora, what would happen against the bigger heavyweight who's going to make Usyk work just as hard without him having to work as hard? Because one thing you saw today is that because Usyk was taller than Chisora, Chisora was forever reaching. And that's one of the secrets of Usyk. Always using his feet to make you reach. And then he'll step out, step back in, catch you with a shot, step out, rotating, and he's frustrating you because he's such a hard target to land flush on. But if you're Anthony Joshua and you take the center of the ring and you're holding this high guard and you're stepping into your jab like he was against Parker and keeping him on the end of a jab, the way he was against Parker, the way Lopez was doing against Lomachenko, and he's saying to you, earn your way into me. I'm not coming after you. You come into me. Well, now all of a sudden, Usyk's going to have to be doing a lot of hard work, constantly rotating so he's not a sitting target and trying to feint his way in, get in enough to catch him and then get out. Because there were a couple of occasions today where he got in, he feinted his way in, and on his way out, he was caught with one of the rangy looping jabs on his way out. Now, they're not big shots at that point of the fight. But if that's AJ, that is going to be a thudding jab where you're leaving the pocket. or Tyson Fury. And he's not really the sort of fighter who's going to come in dipping and ducking and trying to slip shots to land counters. He's not really that sort of, you're not going to get that sort of attacking, overly aggressive approach. So this is going to be a major problem for Usyk going forward in this division. But don't for 1 minute think that he lacks the skill set to compete with these guys. It's just a question of whether his skill set translates well against a guy who's got who's bigger than him with a bigger reach, who might not gas. You might make him gas. But if he's not willing to go to extend himself in the way that you are extending yourself, in the way that Chisora was extending himself, he might not gas. And the onus is then on you to try and find a way to close the gap, because you could just keep putting a jab in your chest and your stomach all night. So let me know what you think, guys. What did you think of the fight? Usyk gave himself a 3 out of 10. That's very harsh, because Chisora is a right handful, and he handled him and he dealt with it. And Tony Bellew was unhappy with the scorecards. A lot of people were. I personally thought it was a very comfortable fight. George Groves had the fight 9-3, 9-3, 8-4. I was in that sort of region personally. But, let's say I was 8-4 for argument's sake. 7-5 is only a 1-round swing. The reason I didn't like the two of the judges' scorecards that were close, where they're saying it was only 2 points, 115, 113. If Chisora had come out and won that last round, you're going to tell me that fight was a draw. The fight wasn't a draw. Usyk won the fight. But it wasn't impressive. It really wasn't impressive. And in the heavyweight division so far, he's yet to set it alight. That doesn't mean he's incapable of going on to win world titles, but they're going to have to look at the drawing board. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to do a second video now of George Kambosos, so I was going to do them both on one video, but it will then start running into the 20-minute mark, and I don't really want to have long videos for post-fight videos. So let me know what you think of this fight. Please check out the preview video of this fight and the George Kambosos fight, so that you know what I was saying up to this point, because I think a lot of what I was saying came out to be pretty accurate. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. God bless.